Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all the bowl games. Wanted to make sure we got some love over there before we got into the CFP craziness that will be happening throughout the rest of this week. We'll be back on Friday to talk about all of that stuff. I promise you that. But also, Anthony, Miami does play on Saturday. Just wanted to make sure you had that information. They do play on Saturday at 3:30 against Iowa State. That's one that I'm really looking forward to. Love those two offenses, and I think they can get after each other pretty good. But let's get to a little bit of a weekend catch up. A ton of stuff that has happened this past weekend. Want to make sure you guys have all of the news that we need to have. So, frankly, I don't have to do a portal segment that just feels like me flying around and speaking like an auctioneer. So, let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And let's start with the transfer portal here. And we'll start with the guy that has been the story of the transfer portal the last little bit. Beau Pribula has officially made his decision. He is going to be Missouri Tiger. Great pickup. I love this pickup. I think he's a guy that absolutely can be the starter right away. We'll give them a little bit more dual threat than what Brady Cook gave them, but he gave them a little bit, but definitely will open that offense a little bit more. Still some things that need to happen out there. They still got get replacements for Theo Weiss, for Luther Burden, which are going to be very tall orders. They still got some things to figure out, no doubt about that, on the offensive side of the ball, but you have your piece, and now you can build around this guy. Very, very talented guy, and I think he's someone that could really play really good football at the SEC level next year. Cam Skattebo, your replacement has been found. Don't you worry. Kanye Udo is coming into Arizona State. Talk about a culture shock. This guy's going to go from West Point, from going to Army Academy, to finding all his way all the way down to Tempe. Man, I got to follow this kid for the next year because he's going to change quite a bit if I had to imagine. But the reality is, on the football field, he's going to be a household name in 2025. This is one of my favorite running backs in the entire country. He was highly recruited coming out of high school, decided to go to Army. Remarkable kid, remarkable player, and absolutely is someone that I think maybe won't be Cam Skattebo level because that's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely can fill some of that void and be a very, very talented player for Arizona State. Isaiah Horton, a guy that we fully expected to come off the board, has officially come off the board. A huge piece added to that Alabama wide receiver room. Not a huge surprise here, but Ryan Williams and Isaiah Horton, along with Jeremy Bernard, along with a couple of the other guys they're bringing in, it's going to be a really fun group. I'll just leave it at that. It feels like a group that's a little bit closer to what Washington had a year ago, and we saw what happened then. So going to be a really fun year for Bama, and it didn't stop there. This was a very fun weekend for Bama. Cam Dewberry, a very talented offensive lineman. This is the guy you get to slide in for Tyler Booker. This is the guy that slides into that left guard position, tries to hold it down. Obviously, Tyler Booker might just be an alien and not of this world, so going to be big shoes to fill, no doubt about that, but a very talented kid here, definitely a guy that can make a huge impact, and I assume will be an almost immediate starter over there at Bama. Deuce Robinson, huge pickup in the wide receiver portal. Florida State gets this one, and they needed it very, very bad. They needed that big-time wide receiver. They lost Johnny Wilson. You lost a little bit of that ability on that offensive side of the ball. We got a 6'6" kid coming in, so don't you worry. You got a big guy coming in. That's Mike Norvell's bread and butter. I think it's going to be a great pickup. I think this kid could be an absolute star in 2025 as long as they figure out a couple of the other issues, especially along that offensive line for Florida State. The biggest name on the market came off the board this morning. Auburn has officially gotten their guy, the elite wide receiver from Georgia Tech, the number one wide receiver in the portal before he came out. And that wide receiver group for Auburn, it's going to be really fun to watch. Him, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson. I don't know if Keandre Lambert-Smith has one more year. I think he might, so it could be ridiculous. It could be a truly, truly remarkable group on the back end there. A lot of stuff still to figure out with that offense, with Hugh Freeze in particular. We'll have to figure that out with time, but this is a talented kid. Definitely adds to what I think about Auburn going into next year. Over to USC and over to Eugene for Bear Alexander. He is making his way up to Oregon. If this kid keeps his head on straight, he's a star. If this kid can show up every single day and go to work, if he can block out all of that stuff and just go to practice, work your butt off, make sure that you're ready to go every Saturday. He is a first-round NFL draft pick. He has not quite hit at a number of different places, and I'm a little bit worried that it might go the same way this time. If he can buckle down, this kid is a star, and it's making me a little bit frustrated that he hasn't quite done that yet. But at the end of the day, maybe Oregon's the right fit. I know him and Dan Lanning were very close when he was at Georgia. Hopefully, that kind of zeroes him in, gets him very focused, and if it does, everybody else watch out in the Big Ten. And USC's done a great job already backfilling with Keyshawn Silver and Jamal Jarrett, very talented guy from Georgia. So USC's doing a little bit better job on the portal trail right about now. Sadir Mitchell, the move to LSU is now officially official. I don't think anyone was really questioning this one. This one was going to happen one way or the other. It just officially happened this past weekend. Really remarkable player. Absolutely will be a huge piece for that defensive line and reunites with his old coach in Bo Davis. Makes total sense. They also added Braylon Moore to that offensive line from Virginia Tech. Huge get. This is might be one of the bigger gets of the entire LSU cycle thus far. Has been absolutely remarkable at Virginia Tech, and we'll have to slide in for a very, very talented player on the interior. Patrick Payton, you're making your way down there to Baton Rouge. This edge rushing group is going to be one of the best in the country, maybe the best in the country, and this guy in particular. This guy with Kevin Peoples and Blake Baker, ooh, buddy. He's going to do some special things. I'm just going to be totally honest with you guys. He could end up being a top 10 pick this next year because him and that defense just feels like a match made in heaven. I think he's going to be a problem. Then you got Deion Hayes. He did an incredible job at Colorado this year setting the edge, was a very, very talented player for them. He's making his way down to College Station now. Very, very good pickup for the Aggies. Probably a little bit more of a supplemental piece, but this is a guy that's just continued to get better throughout his career. Would not be surprised if he was a huge player for A&M in 2025. Staying with the Colorado team, Nikhil Hill-Green making his way to Tuscaloosa. So a couple of guys from Colorado to the SEC. Not the worst recruiting pitch, as crazy as that sounds, not the worst recruiting pitch for Colorado going forward, but another buff that was absolutely incredible this year. I think he's going to be a starter for Alabama next year with a lot of those two big-time linebackers walking out the door. They're going to need to backfill, and I think this is a great piece to backfill with. One of my favorite linebackers in the country, Jacob Manu, is making his way up to Washington to reunite with his former head coach. Very talented kid, and especially with Carson Bruner walking out the door, you need someone to hold down the interior or the middle of that defense. This is going to be your guy. Very talented kid, leading tackler, I believe, the last 2 years for Arizona. Really, really good player. Absolutely will be a big-time piece for Washington next year. And then Tyrese Fearby. This is just a guy I love. I'll be totally honest with you. He has a relentless motor. He flies around the field. He plays so hard. And he's making his way up to Madison, Wisconsin now. I love what Wisconsin's doing in the portal because they're not going outside their means. They're not acting like they're Alabama. They're not acting like they're Ohio State. They are all Wisconsin. Some of the things that they can do are not the same things that a lot of the other teams can do out there. But the reality is they've done an incredible job picking up the guys that they need. They've upgraded all over the place. I think this kid could be an absolute star for them in 2025. And then you got the top available transfer. Zachariah Branch is still on there. Sounds like Georgia could be heating up there. Dane Key, it just feels like a formality of when he commits to Georgia at this point, if I'm being honest. Takario Davis, I expect to go to the NFL draft at the end of all this, so he's in there. He's probably not really in there, if I'm being honest. Max Clare has gone a little bit quiet over the last little bit. Definitely a huge piece for someone. Texas, Louisville, Texas A&M, a lot of teams in for him. Jonte Cook was down in Gainesville this past weekend. Looks like he wants to play the Longhorns in 2025. No surprise there, and it seems like it could be Gainesville where he ends up, which is a ridiculous wide receiver group that we will talk about in time for sure. And then we got other updates. Coaching updates. Steve Belichick has officially been hired over there at UNC. He will join them after the bowl game for Washington. He's done a great job over there at Washington. 27th in the country in yards allowed per game with 324. UNC last year was 377 and then gave up 22.9 points per game. UNC gave up 28.2 per game. So it is going to be an upgrade. They need a little bit more talent on that group, but there's plenty of talent in that UNC group already. It's going to be really interesting to see what the effects of this hire is. And then you got a couple more hires to make. Still, the OC position is very much open. And the thing that I'll be watching probably most closely over the next year or so, how involved is Steve Belichick in recruiting? Because if he's the guy that's kind of heading that, if he's the guy that's kind of leaning into that, he's probably going to be your head coach in waiting. If he's a little bit more on the coaching side of things and let everyone else handle stuff, he still could be the head coach in waiting, but I would lean towards, just watching what he does on the recruiting trail. I think that could be kind of the moniker to give you an idea of what the future holds after Bill Belichick walks out of Chapel Hill. Charles Kelly has been officially hired at Jacksonville State. I believe we only have a couple more on the board in terms of opening jobs right about now. So huge hire here. I think he's a great coach. He was a co-defensive coordinator, safeties coach for Auburn. He spent all his life in Alabama. He has been all over Alabama. He's been coaching, I believe, since the 80s or so. remarkable coach. Absolutely a guy that's going to make a huge difference for this team, and I think it kind of cut from the same cloth of Rich Rod. So really like this hire, and he's going to have all of the recruiting power and connections that you're possibly going to need over there. Norfolk State has hired Michael Vick as their new head coach. This is not one I saw coming. I thought this was one where you throw it out just to get people talking about Norfolk State, and then you make your real hire. They hired him. I'm very surprised. I can't sit here and say that I think it's going to work. I'll be totally honest with you. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch, and I'm more than happy to be along for the ride. It'll be really awesome if it does work, but I don't know. This one just does not feel fully right to me for whatever reason. We'll see what happens with it, but definitely something that's going to be another fascinating storyline in the coaching world heading into 2025. And then the FCS playoff. We got to give some love to the FCS this time of year. We got a little bit of time to give some love to the FCS, so why not? So South Dakota State, North Dakota State, this one was fun. It was really back and forth. If you hated the Penn State SMU game, you might as well have flipped over to this one because it was awesome. A ridiculous one-handed catch from Bryce Lance, who is Trey Lance's brother. 3 touchdowns, 125 yards on the day. With 4 minutes left in the game, he made a huge catch. That was it. That was incredible play by him. Cam Miller was awesome. 4 touchdowns, 272 total yards. The dude was incredible pretty much all day. Cam Miller is absolutely incredible to watch. And North Dakota State makes their way back to another title. South Dakota State stole it from them there for a couple of years, but the big dogs are back. They're trying to get that first title in a couple of years after they went, I think, 9 straight after the last 3 or 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. But remarkable win here. They move on. They're going to play touchdown Tommy Mellott. They're going to play Montana State in the championship game, and the show of Tommy Mellott just continues to roll on. 259 yards, 3 touchdowns for Montana State. They move to 15-0 on the year with 1 more on the line. Can they do it? It's going to be a really fun game over on January 6th. We will be breaking that one down in full. Got to give some love to the FCS this time of year, but that Cam Miller against Tommy Mellott matchup at quarterback, cannot ask for much more. That's going to be so much fun to watch in that FCS championship game. But that'll do it. This was a crazy weekend. It was absolutely all over the place. People were calling people casuals, calling people fringe fans for just believing that wins should matter. A million things happened this past weekend, but at the end of the day, we have come to an end of this show. We will be back on Friday to break down early looks at the first round games. We'll look at the transfer portal. We'll look at some other questions. Maybe some other people have complaints by then. It's the world of college football. A million different things could happen. But we will be back on Friday to update you on everything you need to know. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the content and updates you could possibly need. We got great people covering every single sport you could possibly need. So come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. But I will be back on Friday. Enjoy Christmas, enjoy your families, and then we'll talk about all the craziness on Friday. We'll get into those quarterfinal games. But thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys on Friday.